So why do you think a lot of people are saying they're not going to do the Open?
I think it's like...
Do you mean that maybe they're just not going to sign up, but they're going to do it? Or like they're not going to do it officially? Or
I think it's Kyle told me about it. I guess there's a science to it. It's like the silent majority and the loud minority or whatever it's called.
The silent minority? No, the vocal minority.
That vocal minority.
AKA YouTube comments.
Yeah. But I think that's what you see all the time, because a huge portion of the visibility sphere of CrossFit was bubble athletes, right? Like you have your some superstars, right? There's like 30 people maybe from an athlete perspective.
And maybe you can name 10 of them.
Yeah. And
the regular folks.
Yeah, of the people that are just like, that the changes probably don't really matter to them.
Yeah.
Like they're still
the people coming to class aren't, most of them.
Yeah. Then there's like, those group of people that were like just trying to make regionals, be on regional teams. Like that's a huge portion of the Instagram, YouTube world that has little followings that adds up, and then have their own little like trickle down groups of people that support them.
Yeah, because they're usually the leaders at their gym. And
for sure. I think those are the people that you're hearing a ton of. And interestingly now, because I know that there's always been a lot of hate in CrossFit towards CrossFit about how CrossFit Games was run. Like the open standard management, the judging standards, the special treatment of people that were in the inner circle, all of this type of stuff. And there was always people badgering it. And now, ironically, a huge portion of the people that were part of the inner circle were now fired. And now they're a big part of that like minority of people that are being really vocal, because they realize what needs to happen to make the changes, because now they don't have the support that they used to have about what was being done. So I think it's just because of how these changes happen and who made the changes, and the fact that we haven't heard anything from the governing body of the sport. I think until like yesterday something came out to affiliates. And but regardless, I think that is where a lot of this is coming from. And
do you think once Thursday the workout drops, people are going to just say screw it and do it?
I think a lot of people will. I do think that there would be
do you think can you make a case for just doing it even if you want to sit it out?
I can personally make a case. I
feel like it's fun.
Yeah.
Whether you want to support you're missing out.
Yeah. The people who shouldn't do it are the people whose goals legitimately changed with the changes. Because like if that's the case, and you got other really serious goals that are now taking a priority, don't do it. Or if you think you're going to get injured because you're unprepared. But those two groups of people should have been like that regardless of whether these changes are every year the Open. If that's the case, if you're like, hey, I'm going to get injured if I do this, or this doesn't support my goals, then you shouldn't do it. Pretty much everybody else, every other why not I've heard, I'm like, I don't really support that as being a reason not to do the Open. Like people are, man, I can't make regionals now. I'm like, how many people, of the 400,000 that were doing it before, there was such a small percentage of people that actually had that opportunity anyway. So with a change, without a change, doesn't really matter. I think the classes, like people, if you have some sort of competition in your classes, then supporting the higher level athletes in your box and being a fan of the sport, because if you're doing it and then you see how far ahead they are, you have such an appreciation for how much output they really are. Like me and Travis have a little fun competition that we're doing for the Open where I'm taking his score and adding 8,000 places to it, and then that's our competition. Travis plus 8,000. Whereas like that's
how bad you are?
Dude, I'm worse than that. I did 17.5. My score was like 11,000th or something like that. And when I did it, I was like, oh, I felt pretty good about that. I did almost every set unbroken. I had Brandy keeping me on a time clock. I was like a minute and a half or 2 minutes behind Brandy, and Travis called Travis up to tell him about it, and he pulled up the leaderboard, and he's like, oh my God, we're on page 400. You're so bad. And I was like, yeah, whatever.
That's insane.
It gives it some fun, some context, some meaning, a reason for me to do it. Gym owners, I think, having, unless your gym is completely separated from the sport aspect of fitness, like if it's your program is like, hey, Monday we're doing gymnastics fundamentals, L-sits, hollow body holds, handstand holds, and a bunch of stuff for an hour. And then Tuesday, it's purely strength work. And then Wednesday, it's just a Metcon with a warm-up in that. And then Thursday, it's active recovery cyclical work. And then and it's actually distributed across broad time and modal domains and all the 10 general skills. But I've yet to meet a gym that programs like that, because most people get into CrossFit for the competitive racing whiteboard culture, and maybe they can change that over time. But as of right now, I feel like that is the primary affiliate programming model, and it gets people involved. And being part of a class or a gym that does that during the Open is a pretty cool environment. Like, there's Friday Night Lights, there's a leaderboard, there's people doing redos, there's people that are now competitive that weren't competitive during the course of the year because now there's a global leaderboard. Like, it's just something that's pretty unique to this sport. It's not really in any other sport. I can't go and compete with LeBron James in basketball, or I can't go and compete with Tiger Woods in the U.S. Open, but I can compete with people who are world class in this sport and get a perspective on what they're able to do.
Yeah. All right, interviewing on a budget. We don't have anybody else in this room, so I just had to go turn off and on the cameras. Oh,
Sounded like a
pimping
fart.
ain't easy.
Pimping ain't easy.
I feel like if I was a fan of our stuff, and like going back to before we met a long time ago, but if I could put myself as if I was a viewer of the stuff and just watching the brand from afar, I feel like I would have thought like, hey, this guy's kind of on the fringe and probably real happy that things are blowing up, and but that's totally not the case being inside. Like, you think you want the best for the sport, and why is how come I feel like you would be opposite, and yet at every step of the way you're like, no, don't make excuses, things will pan out. Like, you're very optimistic about whatever will happen.
Yeah, well, I think maybe from other people's perspective, I'm an outsider in the CrossFit culture, but I don't know if that's necessarily because there's any discontent on either side. I'm just I kind of do my thing, and I'm not super social and interested in getting into the inner circle because I really enjoy doing what I do within my sphere of doing it. So I know, okay, well, if I go try to make this connection with somebody that's involved with HQ or somebody that's involved with this, then that's going to take time away from me doing this. It's going to take time away from my training. It's going to take time away from my coaching. So all of the time that I've been kind of disconnected from that inner circle wasn't really resentment about it. I felt like this was kind of a choice about how I wanted to approach my coaching career. Then when the changes happened, there's probably part of me that could be like, man, this is good. A lot of people, their businesses are so entrenched into the inner circle, and they are reliant on the fact that they're part of that inner circle. And now there ain't no inner circle anymore. I don't know who's part of that inner circle, but it's Greg Glassman, the executive board, and whoever else is making decisions about what goes forward. And eventually probably some new inner circle will be developed. But I look at it like everything that I love now, all the stuff, I love coaching, I love the sport. I think the sport, what people don't talk about a lot with regards to CrossFit, they talk about all this sports stuff. They talk about maybe CrossFit turning their back on the sport. But what they don't talk about is how much of a change whoever is, if it's purely Greg Glassman, it's purely Dave Castro, whoever you want to give the credit for that, they evolved the market of physical training in such a beautiful way from my perspective. Back in the day, and I've been involved in the fitness world my whole life because my parents were involved in it as well, it was you could bodybuild, you could do yoga, you could do some sort of endurance style training and do triathlons, or you could train for a sport. There was no cultures blending together and people teaching powerlifting to yogis, people doing yoga that was deliberate and purposeful towards developing better Olympic lifting positions, doing Olympic lifting people doing gymnastics. And I think that it evolved the training market. It brought more good minds into the world of fitness, which I always thought was something that needed to happen.
Do you think they could have done that without the games?
I don't, personally.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I don't. So I think if they are turning their back on it, if it's I read their stuff that they came out yesterday, and maybe it's the fact that it's 6 months late, that's part of the reason why people are really upset. But they were saying, hey, this is going to open opportunities.